Welcome to Sacred Cow Shipyards, where no ship is safe from being taken down to its nuts and bolts. As I mentioned in a previous episode, here at Sacred Cow Shipyards, we are now accepting sponsorships of episodes. Now, no, we are not going to force you to listen to some ad about some video game that I don't play or something like that. Instead, we're taking sponsorship from you, the fans. If you have a project, a book, a shop, a store, a business, whatever the heck it is you have going on, and you feel like sponsoring one of our episodes, feel free to let me know at dockmaster@sacredcowshipyards.com. I mean, really, are you surprised that that's the email address? In any case, if there's one thing I know about humies, I know you run on a substance you produce by picking cherries that aren't cherries off a plant, removing the beans that aren't beans from that cherry that isn't a cherry, and roasting the hell out of them, and then grinding them up and mixing them with water, straining water through them or something. It's such a weird process. But weird to me or not, that is why this week's episode is sponsored by Sanctuary Coffee. They are a roast-to-order, mail-order delivery coffee company that offers everything from single origin to flavored to blends and everything else in between. The really interesting thing, aside from the free shipping on all U.S. orders, is that they actually turn around and take 10% of their proceeds and donate them to organizations that seek to end child abuse or help the children if they were unfortunate enough to have to go through that. That seems like a good thing to me. And let's face it, you're going to drink coffee anyways, because again, that's basically what humanity runs on. Might as well do some good with it too on the side, right? And if the doing some good part isn't enough motivation for you, well, just drop the code DOCKMASTER on your order and you'll save yourself 5%. I mean, come on. Free shipping, whiskey barrel-aged coffee, and doing some good on the side. Where can you go wrong with this? And now on with the rest of the show. The rest of the show doesn't actually involve coffee, but it does involve things that maybe upgraded some organisms in ways they weren't expecting, like I imagine some of you humies hope that coffee upgrades you. Bad news, it probably doesn't make up for a good night's sleep. You should work on that. I was, in fact, recently reminded that while this is a shipyard, we do occasionally have a few random types of people show up, and those random types of people are frequently the most interesting ones who do show up. So, let me recount to you a story that was recounted to me, because, you know, these second, third, fourth-hand stories are totally believable. I don't know, they seem fun to you, I guess. Anyways, once upon a time, not that long ago, according to your own chronology or history, your human species figured out that cracking atoms produced massive amounts of energy. Naturally, you did the, natural thing and realized that massive amounts of energy is equivalent to massive, huge weapons. I mean, it's all natural, right? And you went down the, natural path of developing all that. And one of the places that was absolutely crucial to the development of these weapons and eventually power sources was a facility called the Clinton Engineering Works, which included such individual subsidiary facilities as X-Ray 10, Yankee 12, and Kilo 25 and Kilo 27. Well, that's a whole pile of nonsense that I imagine y'all will take the time to look up yourselves if you want to know the full backstory. And this channel does not exist to give you that backstory, so go forth and learn on your own. But in case you are absolutely too lazy to do that by yourself, rest assured that Kilo 25 is what your United States government now refers to as a Superfund site, and Yankee 12 is, well, a problematic thing if you belong to a certain religious order over another, and X-Ray 10 basically just tries to slide under anyone's attention because it is strictly a research facility now. In fact, one of the most interesting facilities on your planet, the spallation neutron source, exists at X-Ray 10. And likewise, one of the primary sources of certain radiological materials in your United States is the high flux isotope reactor, also housed at X-ray 10. Kind of a big deal, but it kind of slides under a lot of y'all's attention, and there's kind of a reason for that. You see, once upon a time in Midnight Dreary, X-ray 10 was the place where the second graphite nuclear reactor achieved criticality. In fact, if you go to the Nuclear Power Museum in the town outside of X-ray 10 called Oak Ridge, Tennessee, I believe, you can get on a bus that, I don't know if it does it anymore, but you could get on a bus that would take you to the facility where that particular graphite reactor still exists, granted with all the fuel removed and all the graphite blocks very, very heavily shielded now. And you personally can go and view the log of that nuclear reactor, and it is actually open to the page, will forever be open to the page, where they wrote down that they realized that you squishy f***ing human rejects realized that that nuclear reactor achieved criticality. It was self-sustaining. It was running by itself. And the logbook is open to the page where you humy, abject morons realize that. I mean, that's kind of cool. You got to admit. And don't misunderstand, when I'm talking about a graphite reactor, I am talking about this massive obelisk-style wall of graphite with more graphite behind it, and somewhere buried in that graphite is nuclear material. It is this absolute 2001-esque monolith of just like, oh, did you guys know what you were doing? No, you definitely didn't know what you were doing. Why were you doing what you were doing when you had no idea what you were doing? Why were you doing that? Which I suppose leads to my actual story that I'm still trying to get to. Sorry. Anyways, X-ray 10 over the years has changed its purposes, I suppose. It is an express, condition of doing research at X-ray 10 that no research can have anything to do with weapons technology. Now, I would make the argument that weapons technology is kind of a vague definition of terms, but whatever, we'll run with it. But that's the case now. A few years, maybe more years, depending on how you want to count a few on your chronology. A few years ago, that wasn't actually the case. It might have been the intended case, but the reality was that X-ray 10 was still trying to shift from its original, like, oh no, we helped make, atom bombs, to we are strictly a research facility. And that transition involved a lot of nuclear material, as you might expect. Nuclear material that a lot of people were very concerned that didn't wander off. Because all of your countries on your little ball of dirt are terribly concerned about nuclear material. And they really, really do not want it to wander off. So at all of the exits of the facility, and by that I mean both of the exits of the facility, because there are only two. It was designed that way specifically. In fact, strange side tangent, X-ray 10, as I said, had precisely two entrances and exits into the facility, because the facility was in a valley. And, valleys run longwise, and they have one side, and then they have the other side. And yes, you could build roads over the valley, but no one really does that unless they have to. So X-ray 10 was built on the southerly-ish side of one valley, with an exit on the northerly-ish end and the southerly-ish end, and that was it. And then Yankee 12 was built on the northern end of the adjacent valley, with, again, one exit at one end of the valley and one exit at the other end of the valley. And then the Kilo 2527 facilities were kind of a complicated problem because they were built adjacent to a river, but still they were built one valley over. Now, for anyone who knows anything about nuclear weapons and blast radiuses and blast shadows specifically, you kind of have to understand what just happened. Basically, all of the facilities were built that if one went pop, the other ones would be okay. Because the adjacent facilities were at the opposite end of the valleys, and all of the facilities were in different valleys. And the facilities were at the bottom of the valleys. So if something went catastrophically, explosively wrong, the explosion would go up and not out. And even if it went out, the adjacent facility was at the other end of the other valley. And then the adjacent facility to that facility was at the same end as the pop end of the valley, but still 2 valleys over. Yeah. As much as you Humies did not understand what you were doing with nuclear technology, you did a pretty good job all the same. Well, no, I guess that's not fair. You did mostly a good job, which is how this story happened. So yes, I am talking about the X-Ray 10 facility and how they were transitioning from possibly, I don't know, facilitated the development of nuclear weapons to, oh no, we are strictly a, nuclear technology research and development facility that has absolutely nothing to do with weapons. Fine, nothing. Well, in the meantime, during that transition, the people who were concerned about, weapons grade stuff put up radiological sensors at the entrances and exits of the facility. And that's all good and well, except the sensors kept going off. They kept going off like many, many times a day. And the people that the sensors triggered on were like normies. They were janitors and administrators and maybe people also who had access to such interesting materials, and I'm sure they had a much more interesting conversation with certain authorities than the janitors and administrators did, but still, it was going off on people who literally would not have ever had access to the materials on the facility that were being moved off that everyone was concerned about. Why were the sensors going off so many goddamn times? Well, this was, after all, a somewhat old facility, especially in terms of your timeline, with regards to, nuclear technology. And the people who worked the New York City project, nope, that's not right. The Long Island project, nope. Still not right. The Manhattan Project, the people who worked the Manhattan Project charitably had no idea what they were doing. I mean, most of them have admitted this after the fact. This is not surprising to anyone. And unfortunately, a lot of their byproducts and a lot of the things they did and a lot of things they made and a lot of their materials, they randomly buried around the X-Ray 10 facility with the belief that, radiological stuff, we bury it, it's fine, no big deal, nobody has to worry about it, it's going to stay there forever, right? Right? Well, honestly, in fairness, they would have been right if it were not for the development/existence of the, what is that absolutely asshole organization called again? The one that contaminated that river that they still haven't paid people for. The Environmental Protection Agency. Yes, those people. Those people are basically the problem here. Once upon a time, again, the X-Ray 10 facility had to put in a parking lot because, of course, they had more people working at the facility than they did before. And since they had to put in a parking lot, they had to put in a drainage system or a catchment system for it anyways. And because of the EPA. Because the EPA requires these kinds of things happening for reasons. I don't really understand what they do. I don't understand why you people aren't burning their building down for what they did to a certain river in your country, but it doesn't really matter to me personally. Anyways, a parking lot was installed, and a drainage pond was also installed to accommodate the parking lot and assuage the Environmental Protection Agency. All good and well, no big deal. They just dug up the land and put it in a catchment pond. No big deal. Frogs moved in. I mean, frogs move in. It's a pond. It's kind of like the natural habitat of a frog, right? Well, bad news for the frogs. That catchment pond, that EPA mandated drainage pond for the parking lot, happened to be right on top of a, I don't know, what's the right term? Abattoir of nuclear material? Yeah. It's one of the places where the X-Ray 10 original folks buried stuff they didn't know what else to do with. They made some mistakes. They made a lot of mistakes. And then they didn't actually, write down where they made their mistakes. So then people come behind them and we're like, okay, we're going to put in a parking lot here. And the EPA's like, hey, we need like a drainage pond. And you're like, fine, we're going to put it right next to the parking lot. We're going to dig all that up and put in a drainage pond. No big deal. And they exposed stuff. Let's just go with stuff. And then the frogs showed up, again, as frogs do. Little happy amphibians. Poor things. And they spent a few lifetimes, because, I mean, frogs have fairly short, reproductive lifetime cycle things, in this pond. And they got, healthily contaminated, and also picked up, along the way, a very, very healthy dose of, the heavy metals that the pond exposed. I imagine some of you can see where this story is going, but for the rest of y'all, these leggy amphibians on your planet are kind of jumpy. And naturally, parking lots are built adjacent to major roads, because, they drive in, they park, and they go to work, right? And this pond was likewise built adjacent to a major road. And the leggy amphibians, at this point, goddamn fucking mutants, started hopping across the road. And a lot of them didn't make it. Because, Frogger. How hard is Frogger? I mean, seriously, you're trying to get this stupid little frog and he can only jump up, down, left, right. He can't even do diagonals. And you've got to get him across this interstate highway. How hard is that? Well, just imagine that for an actual frog. And, well, a lot of frogs didn't make it. And as mentioned previously, a lot of these frogs were already contaminated with the heavy metals at the bottom of the pond. Those heavy metals were radioactive. And when the unfortunate cars who unfortunately ran across the unfortunate frogs who unfortunately missed their jump across the road, well, their tires got splattered with radiological material. So, as they're leaving this facility one day out of the fucking blue, they get pulled over after failing the radiological check because they ran over a frog. I shit you not. This legitimately, honestly, no joke happened on your planet. Yes, radioactive mutant frogs being squished by scientists' cars' tires were a significant problem, and they were very concerned at the time in your United States of America that the United Soviet Socialist Republic was trying to, steal radiological material because it all happened at the very wrong time. I wish I was making this story up. Maybe I am, honestly. I was told this story by someone who was, again, a little deep in their weeds. But I believe it. Because, yes, in the time of your Cold War, I will totally believe that all kinds of people were freaking out about this radiological sensor gate at the entrances and exits of this facility, just freaking out and never knowing why. And then finally putting together that people were just running over the frogs that were trying to get across the road. Suffice to say that catchment pond does not exist anymore. Other things exist on that facility that we will talk about at a later time. But if you ever think that your species is rational, reasonable, or responsible, just think of the radioactive mutant frogs at X-ray 10 in the Tennessee province of the United States of America. Yeah. And that's all from Sacred Cow Shipyards. Please be advised that any ship left on the docks for more than 24 hours will be compressed to a cube at the owner's expense. Have a nice day.